This week in IT SPARC Cast News Bytes, OpenAI wants to outbusiness Microsoft, Meta goes nuclear, and Claude finds out that running a business ain't easy. Greetings and welcome to IT SPARC Cast News Bytes. I'm your host, John Barker.
And I'm your host, Lou Schmidt. Oh man, what a week. Let's go see what's been going on out there.
It's Friday, June 6th. IT SPARC Cast News Bytes is a digest of the IT news over the last week with insights, opinions, and a little sarcasm from two experts, each with over 20 years of experience working in IT or for IT vendors. And now for the News Bytes.
Oh man, a lot of AI this week, of course. That's where all the action is. But we're seeing some headlines even we couldn't believe. So let's get into it.
That's right. So what we're seeing is something really interesting here. And what we're seeing is some researchers put together a simulation of running a business, and they use Claude Sonnet, and they put together a couple of different modules, and it was all simulated, and it was a vending machine business. And they had Claude run it and track inventory, track sales, and all kinds of other things. And as it went along, Claude got confused.
So is this a simulated business, right?
Fully simulated. There was no
All
real inventory. There was no real vending machines, nothing else. It was basically a set of subroutines that Claude saw as tasks, and it basically thought it was running the business as an agent. And then at one point, it got confused, and it got so confused, it apparently got frustrated and decided to shut down the business. So the whole point of this...
Wait a minute. Last week, we talked about AIs that wouldn't stop.
Correct.
This
now
week...
now we have an AI that decided just to give up and quit.
Wow.
Now, in my mind, what this is this goes along with LLMs that hallucinate. And it's something that we've been saying all along about, AI is not going to take your job. Somebody using AI will. And the way you need to treat your LLMs and various other generative AI tools that you're using is as an intern. And it's somebody that's taking on the mundane work for you. And that means you've got to check its work. And you can't just turn it on and expect it to just keep running. So I'll give you an example, a real world example for myself. I mean, I see hallucinations and problems all the time. So Lou and I were talking about building a new segment for the podcast that was about historical figures in IT and giving you a background on them. And I was actually going on a walk, and I decided to have a conversation with ChatGPT and ideate about this and get some background about this. And I was talking about various figures, Steve Jobs and Bill Gates and all of that. And as I was having these conversations, I realized that ChatGPT was starting to conflate the childhood backgrounds between Bill Gates and Steve Jobs. And
what?
I wasn't mixing the conversations. I had a conversation for about 10 or 15 minutes about Steve Jobs growing up and meeting Steve Wozniak in school. And then from there, how they evolved their friendship, and then how they kind of drifted apart and back together. And every time they came back together, they decided to do something new, and they went on from there. And then I had the same kind of conversation about Bill Gates and how he grew up in more affluent environment. His father was an attorney, and then it went to him going to college and then and they both were dropouts. So that part was the same. And I think that's what confused it, in that it had him going to the same college as Steve Jobs and then forming a business with Steve Wozniak, and it got all confused on itself. So the point here is that LLMs still hallucinate. So this was just 3 or 4 weeks ago. So this is not, 2 years ago.
Okay, so recent. Can I add some color to this?
Sure.
So the key takeaway from this for us was trust but verify, and then don't trust anyway, right?
Yeah.
But we had another article we ran across where a company called Builder.ai was revealed to be 700 Indian programmers not AIs,
Right.
doing the work. They went bankrupt recently, so I'm just waiting for the inevitable story where there's two kids in their dad's overcoat, and that's AI.
Exactly.
So the thing to worry about right now, the thing to watch for right now is that it is absolutely the Wild West. We have a rant on this that we're going to drop as well. So please come check us out and throw rocks at us. But everything you can think of is happening out there right now.
Yeah.
Everything.
So speaking of that, maybe on a more scary note, why don't we talk about what's going on with 404 media?
Actually, I think that's a really good idea. So 404B, I picked this one up because we tend to track security and privacy pretty closely. Privacy is obviously a big challenge. The more interconnected we get, the more walls get broken. But what's happening is 404B calls out a new service called YouTube Tools. What YouTube Tools is doing is scraping comments and using AI to figure out what their location, languages, and political leanings are. So this, as you can tell, this is very useful information, both if you're trying to do marketing and if you're trying to be a government and control things. We call it out in the enterprise space because you're going to run into this in one of two ways. Either you're going to run into this because somebody's scraping your comments and somebody's going to come and sue you. So that's something to think about. Or because your marketing department's grumping because they can't get this information. So you need to know that this exists. And the developer claims that they're reportedly a EU-based company with OSINT background, markets for law enforcement use, claiming adoption by agencies in Portugal, Belgium, other EU countries. Right? There's some serious privacy risks here. AI and data, it uses a modified Mistral language model to get this information. So the challenge is that our usernames are not as unique as our passwords. And most of us tend to stick to sort of a theme. I do, if you want to remember it, right? A theme on what your username is going to be and what you're going to do. That can be correlated across multiple services. So where do we see this going? I don't know, John. Are we going to have to do a username equivalent of 1Password?
Yeah, well, it's interesting, and a lot of times your username on some platforms is your actual name, and that can be done. And I think that we see more and more push from corporate entities for people to engage on social media to promote their employer
Yes.
on LinkedIn and other platforms. And this type of back channeling and reverse doxing, if you will. So like being able to find out who people are, where they live, and information about them through things like YouTube might mean that maybe there's a liability for the corporate entity if they've pushed their employees to do this or encouraged their employees to do this. Maybe there is a need for some sort of identity protection provided by the corporate entity, the employer. Maybe there's other privacy tools that we need to consider. I think there's a lot that this could open up a whole new area of privacy protection that has up till now not been considered.
Absolutely. And one of the things I've seen here is that this does, just for folks here that are looking at this, they're like, does this violate YouTube's terms of service? Absolutely, it does.
Sure.
The question is, what do you do about it? Comments are public. It's public metadata, right? I can get this stuff coming from all sorts of different directions if I want to use a distributed approach. There was another article that was related to this that I think is interesting to highlight as well, is that both Meta and Yandex are using a similar technique to peel off the anonymity of mobile Chrome browser. But looking at usage patterns and established ports, and using the broader data. So the thing to watch for in this, if you're in a corporate compliance environment, is that you're going to have to go deeper. It's possible you may actually have to proactively anonymize your users' comments to prevent this type of thing from happening.
Yeah.
So
a lot more to this, and I think we'll follow up, and I think we'll see a lot more of this.
I think we're looking at a lawsuit here within a year, if
Yeah.
not sooner. And if these guys are doing it as a tool you can buy, that means 50 intelligence agencies have been doing it for years. So that's a challenge, right?
Yep. Well, so moving on, OpenAI has announced some new features for their business users. And while I originally saw this on their YouTube channel where they made their announcement, there's also a great overview on WinBuzzer. And while last week we discussed how Microsoft was allowing enterprise users to add corporate specific data into Copilot, this week OpenAI is announcing something similar. However, the mechanism that they're doing it is different.
How are they sandboxing it?
Well, so it's a similar sandbox. So when you are a corporate user, you have a corporate license, an enterprise license for ChatGPT, you have your sandbox there as well. Now, the question is whether you trust that or not, and that's totally up to you and your enterprise, whether you do trust it. And that's a whole big discussion about AI, which we won't really get into here.
Until next week.
Until next week. But the difference here is that with Copilot, you had to have somebody that was manually entering data, code, templates, and things into an interface for Copilot. In this case, OpenAI is using MCP, which is the Model Context Protocol, and using the connectors. This is a standard way of connecting different applications and different AI models together. And by doing that, it connects to your existing data repositories and tools. So this includes things like cloud connections, cloud storage connections. It includes the ability to record meetings in ChatGPT directly. It includes other applications such as Google Drive, Dropbox, Microsoft OneDrive, Outlook, SharePoint, and things along those lines. So during the launch session, OpenAI's head of business products, Nate Gonzalez, introduced this record mode. So while in the meeting, there's actually a record button. It's a circle with a little square in it inside the ChatGPT interface. If you're an enterprise user, so it's not available to the Pro and Plus users. You have to be an enterprise user, and if you hit that, it does a recording and creates a transcript, and then it'll create action items and all of those things, which is features you see in things like Zoom and things along those lines. Now, my big question on that one, just I'm going to step back for a second, is with Zoom, and Lou and I use Zoom. We actually record our podcast in a podcast tool, but we also record it in Zoom at the same time. And it creates a transcript, and it says Lou says this and John says this, and it creates a really nice transcript that we can separate out. If I do a recording in another tool, it puts all of our words together. It doesn't say Lou said this and John said this. I wonder how ChatGPT is going to do that with a single microphone, just recording a group of people talking. That'll be interesting to see how it handles that. So that'll be interesting.
It's coming though.
Yeah. So, but
it's here. Yeah.
The interesting thing about with this Model Context Protocol with MCP is the ability for the agents of ChatGPT to basically comb through your data and to learn about the business. And what the demo that they showed was, log into my customer relationship tool and project the chances of X number of deals closing, and give me a projection for the end of the quarter that I can present to, this is very much a sales forecast, to my executive leadership team, and use the template that we decided on last week that we are going to use for our executive level presentations for Q3 results. And so it went and found the template, it went and found the data out of the customer relationship database. And again, that could be HubSpot, which is one they use, but it could be Salesforce, it could be whatever the tool is that you would use. And it correlated all that data. You could give it additional parameters if you didn't like the way it gathered the data, or if you want to weight things different ways, you could give it a bunch of control. So basically it acts as, again, that intern that would normally take 2 weeks to gather this data. And it did it in a matter of minutes.
And we are absolutely seeing impact on entry-level jobs for this sort of thing.
100%.
Already.
Now, as somebody who has been in sales, and I've sit in those forecast calls, and I've sit in what they call the QBRs, the quarterly business reviews, where the sales teams report out to executives on what's coming. That's a lot of work, and that for the week leading up to the QBR, some of those sales teams don't get a lot done leading up to it. So this will basically allow them to continue to work and do their jobs and to sell and other things while they can still create all of this data that then needs to get promoted up. Now they still have to review it, as we talked about earlier.
Yeah, but still, just the act of stopping and putting a checkpoint in to do a QBR
Right.
is hugely distracting.
It is. It is. Now, this is not just sales related. This could be any kind of data collection, generation, report creation, all of these things that is very manually intensive. It could be correlate the research data that we've collected in this medical research that we're doing. It could be take all the code that was written by the engineering department, and we had 3 different people working on a similar problem, correlate everything they're working on and maybe find the best way to solve this problem. There's all kinds of different ways that this could go together. So I think this is actually really interesting. And now we have 2 of the big players here coming up with different ways to solve similar problems. And I think that's great. And we're just going to see more and more of this.
Yes. And we have a rant on this.
We do have a rant on this.
We do have a rant on this. We know where this is going.
And that is going to cover this episode. We couldn't do podcasts like this without listeners like you. We would love to hear what you think. If you have another topic you want us to cover, send email to feedback@itsparkcast.com or hit us up on X @ITSparkcast. Be sure to hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications to make sure that you never miss a new video that we drop on YouTube. Speaking of YouTube, if you are watching us there, please make sure that you drop a comment down below so that we know that you are listening, and that we do read every single comment that we get and we respond to most. So with that, from the world of enterprise IT, take care.
See ya.